Good afternoon, dear students, and welcome to the 10th unit of the course MMBA 002 Human Resource Development. So, students, we had conceptualized the meaning of human resource development as a process of developing competences, commitment, and organization's culture of the organization. So when we talk of the basic aspects, basic dimensions of the human resource development concept, it focuses in two different aspects. One, it focuses on the individuals and development of the competences and the commitment level of the individuals. Second, it focuses on the organizational dimensions, right? So as of now, whatever we have discussed, like we have discussed the basic concept of performances, we have discussed how to identify the gap between the standards and the actual performances. How do we bridge that gap? What is career planning? What is succession planning? How do we develop competences within the individual? How do we enhance the productivity of the employees through the concept of mentoring, coaching, counseling? All of those aspects that we discussed in our previous sessions, those are focusing mainly on the individual dimensions and the role of HRD in developing those individual aspects of the organization, right? Individual aspects of the employees in the organization. But moreover, whenever we do talk of the aspects which are related to the organization as a whole, when it's treated as a system, the organizational dimensions need to be taken into consideration also. Whenever we do talk of the development of the organization, the concept of OD, organizational development, so that is somehow focuses on the holistic growth of the organization, the holistic approach that the organization need to take for enhancing its productivity. And in relation to that, one of the most important aspects, most important dimensions that the organizations need to take into consideration is the industrial relationship system. So, what role the HRD plays in enhancing the industrial relationship scenario of the organization? What role that the HRD is going to have for all the actors in the IR system of the organization? What is the impact of IR system in the organization? That is what we are going to discuss in this session. So let us start with an insight into the concept of this industrial relationship system itself. And to understand that, we need to think of the basic aspects of the organization or industrial relationship system. Whenever I do talk of the relationships that exist among the stakeholders of the organization, right? And all those relationships which are there associated because of the employment terms and conditions, right? We need to focus on that. So I do come out with three such important, aspects of the organization, where the first such aspect is the management of the organization. I mean, the people who do have the responsibility of taking the cause of the organization to the next level, who manage those resources, who think of the productivity of the organization. Okay? So, if I do talk of the viewpoint of the management itself, what they want, management want higher productivity, higher profit, an organizational climate without any kind of disturbances. So it should be a congenial climate, right? Where there has to be a harmonious relationship between these workers and the management. Number of man days lost because of the employee unrest should be minimized. There should not be at any cost, there should not be any kind of production loss. Wastages should be minimized. So these are some of the basic objectives that the management does have from the organization, from the entire process. But at the same time, when we do talk of this management, on the other hand, we do have these workers or their organizations such as unions. Now, if I do consider the viewpoint of the unions, what I do come out with? Unions do have just the opposite viewpoint of the management, where management of the organization would like to maximize profit. The unions of the organization would like to share the profit with the workers. When the management of the organization would like to enhance the productivity of the organization of the workers want more and more remuneration from that. Workers of the union want a better environment where the workers and union can contribute. So welfare facilities extended to the employees of the organization can also be taken into consideration. More or less, workers or their union want better pay packages, better welfare facilities, better conditions of work whereby they can contribute. So if I to talk of the viewpoint of the management and the viewpoint of the union, some are rather, it may be appealing to me that they are opposite of one another. One, management want profit maximization, workers want profit sharing. So some are rather, it appears that it is opposite to one another, but actually that is not the case. With a harmonious, with a congenial industrial relationship system, the objectives that both the management and the workers do have can be mutually achieved. That is what we mean. But at the same time, we understand that it's the government who acts as a regulatory authority to regulate the relationship between the management and the workers at the place of work. Right? They do have the objective of economic growth of the society, economic growth of the nation, right? Where the productivity can lead to maximization of the economic benefit. So it will ultimately improve the societal culture. It will ultimately improve the societal conditions. So all of those. So when we do say that the management of the organization, the workers and the government as a regulatory authority, right? All of they used to have different sort of objectives, but can these objectives be unified? Can the objectives or the basic aspects of the management, basic aspects of the workers, and basic aspects of the government can be taken together? What are the challenges that are there with us? We need to understand those kind of challenges, right? So if we do understand basic conditions of industrial relationship system, a traditional definition says that it is all about the relationship between the management and their employees, among the employees and their organization, which arises out of employment. That means any type of relationship which emerges at the place of work because of employment, right? It may be between the relationship of management to management, between management and the workers, between workers and the workers. Sometimes we do refer the management as an organization, the workers as their organization, as unions, right? Employers, federations are there, associations are there. So sometimes we deal them as an individual entity or maybe as an organization. But any kind of relationship that exists there in the organization which emerges out of the employment relationship means there has to be employer-employee relationship. We call that as the industrial relationship system, right? So employment terms and conditions must be there. Employer-employee relationship must be there. Then only those kind of relationships are called as employment relationships, right? Industrial relationships, right? Okay. But nowadays, if we talk of the basic aspects of this industrial relationship system, we say this is a very composite, very complex process, as as we discussed, that individuals are the socio-psychological animals, right? They do have their own psychological aspects, means they do have their own cognitions, they do have their own thought processes. So the human beings who can have different sort of responses, behavior at different times, right? And all of those things do happen because of their attitude, because of their approach, right? So the basic condition on which the success of any industrial relationship system depends on what is the attitude of the workers towards the management, what is the attitude of the management towards the workers, what is the attitude or approach that the workers do have towards the management, and what is the approach of the manager or the employees towards the workers. That means all it is driven by different philosophies that people do carry to the place of work. Right? Say for example, there are certain employees organizations or unions, right? Unions who are driven by the concept of Karl Marx, Marxism. Marxism said, right, the society is divided into two group of people, right? The landlords, landless people, the people who do have accumulated wealth and people who do not have wealth. And the objective is to bring parity. It's okay, that is fine. But Karl Marx's approach was that any kind of equity in the society can be brought through violence only. So the unions which are driven by the concept of or the philosophy of Karl Marx, they believe in violence. So they believe in non-cooperation. They believe in strikes, lockouts, thereos, etc., etc. So they do have a very negative attitude towards the management itself. They don't value cooperation at all. Right? Even if we talk of the participative style of management, where the workers' representation is there, but most of the time, we do see oppositions from those kind of organizations, those kind of employees organizations, right? So that is what we need to understand. Similarly, if we talk of the basic philosophy of the management towards the workers, we have understood earlier also. Management can be autocratic, management can be bureaucratic, management can be participative, management can be benevolent, right? So if the management's attitude is of autocratic nature, so this decision is taken by the management that is imposed on the workers only. I think workers don't have a right to take part in the decision making process. So can I have the active participation of the workers over there? No. So this is what we need to understand, that whenever we are dealing with the relationships which are emerging out of employment, actually we need to think of the attitude and the approach that exists between the management and the workers in that organization. Beyond that, we need to talk of the attitude and the approach is related to all the managerial aspects only, like we do talk of the planning processes, whether the workers are being involved in the decision-making process, in the planning process of the organization or not. Whether what sort of supervision is there, whether the workers are having a very close supervision or they are provided with the autonomy. What is their contribution towards the vision of the organization, coordination of activities, all of those things we will talk of, right? But objective is you need to carry out all those with managing the human resources in an effective way without any kind of friction, without any kind of conflict. Because as we understand that the basic aspects of the management and the basic aspects of the workers are opposite of one another, right? So there is a high probability that the workers and the management are in a position of conflict or do have conflict among themselves at all the time to come. But our objective is that how to minimize those conflicts, those frictions that exist there between the management and the workers, and you need to work for the cooperation of all, genuine well-being of all the people in the organization. Okay? So these are the basic aspects of the industrial relationship system, where we do understand that it is arised out of employment relations. Both conflict and cooperation exist at the place of work. What we need to focus on, whether we should think of minimizing the level of conflict, maximizing the level of cooperation. We need to understand the basic factors like leading towards conflict and the other aspects leading towards cooperation among the workers itself, right? So that is what we need to think of. But like, two sides do always have conflict and cooperation existing there. We are talking of the influence of external factors. All those factors we are talking of, right? May it be political, may it be social, technological, economical, environmental, legal, whatever it may be. All those factors do have a direct influence on the industrial relationship system, because organizations are nowadays are like glass walls, open houses, right? Anything happening outside has a direct impact on the organization. We'll discuss that, right? But it is also regulated by, as we discussed now, government acts as a regulatory authority. So government from time to time, form various rules and regulations, laws, various customs, traditions, enactments we to talk of, right? So we say government, has enacted many such, laws, which can be categorized as protective legislations. The basic objective is to protect the workers from the exploitation of the management. Regulative legislations regulate the aspects of the organization. Compensation related legislations, social security related legislations, and somehow other there is a mixed category. So let us call it as a miscellaneous category of legislations. Right? So with these kind of legislations, we do have all those things. Like we do have industrial relationship system to define that. We do have Industrial Dispute Act 1947, Factories Act 1948, the Trade Union Act 1926, right? Horizontal rules when talking of the compensation related acts like the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act, Equal Remuneration Act. We do have social security related legislations like ESI Act, EPF Act. We do have maternity benefit. Many such kind of rules and regulations have been established by the government as a regulatory authority to regulate the activities, and industries need to abide by all those kind of rules and regulations, right? We say equity and fairness should be the foundation stone of any industrial relationship system. So at any cost, you shouldn't have any kind of inequity in the place of work itself, right? Balance is required to ensure that there's a smooth distribution of power and authority, right? So it should not happen that the power and authority should be accumulated by few only. Environment of integrity, trust, transparency, all of those things that we need to understand, right? So here we do come out with the basic aspects of this industrial relationship system, where if I to talk of this industrial relationship system, I understand there is 4 different important aspects of the same, where we say first is institutions, right? When we do talk of institutions, it's either the employers as an individual unit or employers organizations, federations that is involved. Employees organization, federation, or maybe unions we do call it as in a common sense, right? So like that only it is the other unit of the industrial relationship scenario. We say government agencies, government bodies to regulate the activities. We do have certain government bodies like we do have ILCs, SLCs, Indian Labour Conferences, Standing Labour Committees, right? We do have, Labor Commissioner's Office, Central Labor Commissioner's Office, State Labor Commissioner's Office. They do have their own hierarchical structure to look after the industrial activities throughout the state or throughout the country itself, right? We do have the various authorities as mentioned under the Industrial Dispute Act to regulate or to settle down the disputes. So we do have grievance settle. We do have labor courts, industrial tribunals, national tribunals. We do have conciliation officers. We do have board of conciliations, court of inquiry. These are all the government body to regulate the work activities of industrial relationship system. However, the detailed functioning of all of those things you can go through the court's industrial relationship system, right? We say whenever we do talk of the characters, it's workers and unions. We understand the employers and federations. It's okay. And somehow rather, when we refer to management of the organization, we can see it can be the managers, the labor relations officers, right? We can think of grievance settlement officers at the organizations, all of those people who are involved in the process of settlement of disputes or grievances at the place of work itself, right? And we do talk of the government bodies, here starting from the ALOs to the labor commissioners, right? There are authorities having different responsibilities. Okay? We do talk of that. Methods. The basic objective of this industrial relationship system is to develop a harmonious industrial relationship system, conflict-free, right? So, how can that be achieved? That can be achieved through the process of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is a part of the process where workers are involved in the decision-making process. So collective bargaining is a process of settlement of any kind of grievances, if at all, disputes, if at all, right? Where the representative of the workers, the representative of the management, they sit and finalize the terms and conditions of employment and service. So whatever it may be related to the terms and conditions of employment, it is the workers who do play a very active role. So workers bargaining process, what we call it as a collective bargaining process, is important. As a part of their participative, as a part of their participation in the management, organizations do have many such forums created for the purpose who work on a continuous basis. We do have unit councils, SOC councils, plant councils, joint management councils, right? Joint councils even, and works committee. These are all different sort of forums through which workers take part in the decision-making process of the organization, right? We can think of disciplinary and grievance settlement procedures itself. Grievance settlement procedures, like there's a concept like why we should have a dispute, why not to take care of the grievances at the individual level, right? So that should be defined properly. Disputes, settlement of disputes, it's okay. Like we are talking of strikes, lockouts, garrows, right? Picketing kind of thing. Many such different forms of disputes are there. And that should be managed through conciliation, arbitration, or adjudication. These are the methods. And when we talk of the basic content, content takes all the different aspects of the organization, all the different verticals of HR, but major aspects of the organization, like you're talking of employment conditions, payrolls, allowances, working conditions, health, safety, welfare measures, social security, disciplinary norms, norms of termination, separation, retirement. These are some of the important aspects on the basis of which the bargaining or participation or this particular to discuss and comes out with rules and regulations, right? So this is how this happens with the basic objective of enhancing the industrial peace and harmony, industrial democracy. So workers' involvement in the process is most beneficial to the workers, benefit to the management, productivity of the organization. But we need to understand the system. We need to understand the system and the complexities of the system through a very important concept. That's the system approach, right? As given by John T. Dunlop, right? But it says the industrial relationship system at any point of time is a system comprised of certain actors, certain context, certain ideologies, which binds the industrial relationship system together and then form a body of rules and regulations to govern the actors in the IS system. Okay? So these are the four such important aspects of the organization or industrial relationship system. What we say first is, whenever we talk of certain actors, actors means it is all the stakeholders who directly or indirectly involved in the process because of their employment relationships, right? So it may be the hierarchy of the managers or their representatives, right, who represent the management to the workers itself. Maybe we are talking of the hierarchy of the workers or their spokesperson, right? That means what? Sometimes, like it's a condition under our Trade Union Act 1926 that 50% of the office bearers can be the persons outside the organization, right? Sometimes to protect the interest of the workers or to overcome that fear, psychosis, right? Workers don't feel it comfortable to discuss directly with the management. So sometimes what they do, they take the help of some external people, right? Influential people to represent the workers, right? So that is what we say. So any such kind of worker by himself can be treated as a leader of the workers' union, or maybe some other people. Like mostly, we do have this people from the society who do have that influential power can be taken as a spokesperson of the workers, right? We discussed the specialized government agencies, like starting from Labor Commissioner's Office to the bottom, ALOs, Assistant Labor Officers, right? So each and every, staff member is involved in the process of IS system, right? So their objective is defined in different ways altogether. They need to understand and they need to play their role, right? When we talk of the context are the environmental factors which do have a direct impact on the organizational aspects of the organizational aspects, we do say, like we do talk of the impact of technology on the organization, impact of growth of science and technology, right? So starting from, we can see the starting from a very manual process of manufacturing to the automated processes, right, to the robotics. We have seen so many changes in the organizational processes. Okay? So isn't it that all these kind of changes have somehow or other impact on the human resources? Yes, right? So beyond that, if I need to, think of any other constant, it's the market constant or the budgetary constant that I do have for the organizations, right? Similarly, locus of distribution of power in the larger society is another one factor that we need to take into consideration. Distribution of power is, that's what I was telling you, that how this power is distributed among the members in the society, whether the power is accumulated with few hands or the power is equally distributed in the society. Based on that, we need to define the context, right? Ideologies, we need to understand that each and every actor in the IS system, may it be the worker or their organization, management and their organization, or any such government officials, right? So they do have different sort of roles and responsibilities, right? And the basic idea is that each actor holds certain pre-assumptions towards the place, right, and the functions of others in the system. Need to understand, right? So workers or their organizations do have certain presumptions, pre-assumptions, to say, towards the management, right? Mostly, these things to happen during the time of change or any kind of transformation that the organizations do witness. What happens over there? When the ownership is transformed from public to private hands, people do have a fear psychosis that they will have more, workloads, their pay cuts will be there, their life will be miserable, all those things kind of notions they do have, right? And that is what that makes this process a more complex one. And what happened? All these three things, when the actors, context, ideology, they interact at the place of work, right? So our objective is to establish some rules and regulations, right? Establishing the rules and regulations so that the relationship between the management and the workers can be guided properly. That's what we do say. Whatever it may be, before implementation of any such rule related to this industrial relationship system, even government observes or calls for a discussion in a common forum where these workers representatives and the management representatives, they do sit. Right? So they implement certain rules and regulations, right? So duties and performances that is expected from the workers and from the management itself, we do have Standing Orders Act, right? So Standing Orders Act deals with all of those things. Now, what we need to understand is the basic process. As I said, the inputs to the organization, right? We said these organizations are guided by this IPO model, input process output model, where the input is the external factor, output is also external, right? But the process is important in a sense. This process defines the relationship between the management and the workers. And whenever we do talk of the success or failure of these processes, that is due to the attitude of the management towards the workers or workers towards the organizations, right? So what are the inputs we do talk of? The actors we do say, right? Workers, their organizations, management, their organization, and the government as a whole. Environmental context, we do understand the various distal factors, we do political, economical, social, technological, legal, environmental, like that. We do say all these actors in the IR system, they are driven by their own ideologies, right? So being guided by certain influential forces itself, locus and distribution of power in the society, that is what we have understood. But when all of these things do interact at the place of work, right? Interact at the place of work, they come out with certain outcomes, outputs, we just say. But how do they interact? They negotiate with one another. We do say that there is a process of conciliation. Conciliation means a central government employee will be appointed to mediate between the workers and the management in the organization, right? It's a conciliation. So conciliation can be of two types. One is board of conciliation, right? Or a conciliation officer itself, depends. Arbitration is referring the dispute to the court itself. Sorry, arbitration is when this conciliation process fails. So there, a voluntary approach taken by the management and the workers do take place, where they appoint a neutral person as an arbitrator to mediate between the workers and the management itself. So the role of the arbitrator is very important. Adjudication is referring the matter of dispute or matter of disagreement to the court itself. And adjudication, we do come out with certain legal aspects like the labor courts, industrial tribunals, national tribunals. The basic objective is these actors, by considering, or these actors with the set of ideologies, considering the environmental contexts, considering the locus of distribution of power, they interact at the place of work, where interaction, negotiation, conciliation, these are the things which happens to be there, and they come out with certain rules and regulations. These rules and regulations actually guide the individuals in the organization itself. So we have understood the industrial relationship system as a process whereby the relationship between the management and the workers should be a congenial one, should be harmonious one, without any kind of disturbances. It should be based on the level of trust and cooperation. Right? Let us now understand the second part of our study, where we are talking of the concept of HRD and OD and IR. Right? We have understood this HRD as a continuous planned process to enhance the competencies, to enhance the commitment level of the workers, and to develop the culture of the organization. Competencies, commitment, and culture, right? So, with this objective, we have understood that the level of competency, commitment, and this culture can be developed through this team efforts, teamwork, and collaborative efforts, right? So, what is the linkage of HRD with the industrial relationship system? We'll discuss that. But we need to understand the concept of OD. We say OD is a long-term effort, long-range effort of the organization to develop the self-renewal abilities of the organization. We say it's an organization's problem-solving process, right? Where we need to develop a sense of ownership in the organization, right? Where the organization can accept any kind of challenges that is being imposed with its continuous learning process. So that culture of teams, culture of collaborations, culture of continuous learning, these are the things which needs to be incorporated with the formal work systems of the organization. That's what we need to understand, right? So if I do consider this HRD, OD, and IR, you do see HRD is developing the human resources, their competencies, commitment, right, and culture. OD, systematic planned intervention to develop human resource competencies again for the growth and development of the organization, right? So on a long-term basis, I need to think of preparing my human resources. And when I do talk of industrial relations, this basically focuses on the protection of the interests, protection of interest of the working class workers, right? So how they are linked? When the workers will be satisfied, right? They will be committed, they will be loyal, they will be, they will exhibit their ownership towards the organization. And whenever I do talk of these aspects of the human resources being to be or to be considered, that will ultimately lead towards organizational development. But what we need to do is to mediate between this objectives of IR and OD in a long term by enhancing the competencies, commitment, and culture. So these are the aspects of the industrial relationship which are taken as most important aspects, right? But why do we think that this integration is highly essential? HRD and IR integration. Now, nowadays we do see any technology driven by science, are obsolete or becoming obsolete in a couple of days. So we don't know what new technology will come up. You can see this starting from in the past 3 decades. You can see we have started manual processes to the incorporation of computerized processes, automated processes, right? That was again was influenced by the concept of nanotechnology, right? Influenced by the concept of robotics. Now, with the concept of AI, artificial intelligence. If the organizations will not cope with those kind of technological advancements, how do you cope with the competitive challenges being imposed on you? Who can do that? Is the human resources. So are they ready to take up the challenges? That's what we need to understand, right? Okay. So increasing diversity among the workers, this is what another challenge that we do have. Okay. People from different cultures, traditions, customs, fooding habits, dressing habits, they come and work at the same workplace. Diversity will be discussed it earlier, right? So chances of conflicts, chances of grievances are more when you have diversified working class in our organization. Innovative personal practices and changing dimensions of quality of work life itself. We have understood, Generation X employees, Generation Y employees, Gen Z employees, millennials, all those veterans, all those employees do have different sort of expectations from their work. But when I do have an environment where the people from all these diversified group are there, and I need to develop the quality of work life, how can I do that? I need to understand it in detail. That's what we need to take into consideration, right? Beyond that, we're talking of pressure from the government for workers' participation in management. Of course, with the rules and regulations of the government only, this workers' participation forums have been created. Like we said, unit councils, sub councils, plant councils, works committee, joint management councils, etc. Right? So these are the forums through which these workers can participate in the decision-making process. Okay? But if the workers will not be developed, then what will happen? Can I have that effectiveness of the organization to have its competitive advantage? May not be. So it is high time when we do see that the importance of industrial relationship scenario are in a declining trend. It's high time that we need to once again regain the values of IR system by integrating the the HRD practices with the higher practices of the organization, right? So how can we do that? Basic objective: enhancing competencies and culture. Right? Competencies commitment. We need to think of like how this management at different hierarchical level, right, should be trained to develop their competencies. Unions, we will see that unions are different hierarchical level. It is a structured union or unstructured union, it's a registered union or not non-registered union, recognized union or not. But they do play a very important role. Government officials, right? Starting from labor commissioner to assistant labor officers, each and every one, right? Beyond that, we say the adjudicators, arbitrators, conciliation officers, all of those are the people who are involved in the process itself, right? Then we say it's a development of the processes. So more or less focuses on development of culture. So we say it's octopus culture. We have discussed it earlier also. Openness, confrontation, right? Trust, autonomy, proactive, authentic, collaboration, experimentation, right? So these are the dimensions of the organizational culture. If I to talk of the basic aspects that we need to take into consideration for developing the management, right? Management means is the executives at the top level of the organizational hierarchy whose basic responsibility is confined with the formulation of policies, plans, rules, regulations of the organization, right? So sometimes this top level management people becomes a role model for the bottom level executives. So whenever we to talk of the development of the top level management, right? Development of the top level management, we say HRD plays a very vital role in developing the competencies as required. What are the competencies required? So organizations must be driven by value. So value based practices, value based ethical practices, right? Cultural practices. So normal day-to-day life practices, we say organizational processes, everything has to be defined. So whatever processes we are defining, that has to add certain value to the organization, right? We say culture. We have discussed earlier also, right? Culture is something which is accepted by the members, right? So where from the members of the organization to accept that particular culture? It's from the senior management only, right? It passes from generation to generation. So the top level management, they do play a significant role in ensuring the value and the culture of the organization, right? Beyond that, senior level of managerial people, right? They play a very vital role during the time of change. So they act as a change catalyst. During any such kind of strategic decisions which requires the organization to accept any kind of changes like mergers, acquisitions, buybacks, disinvestments, takeovers, acquisitions, right? So workers do have a fear psychosis of losing their job, right? Or maybe being exposed to very you know, leverage work environment, more workload. But here, this senior managerial people, they act as a catalyst in a sense. They motivate the workers towards the original goal of the organization, right? So they act in a sense that they need to remove all those kind of negative mindset that the people do have towards these change processes, right? So they act as a change catalyst. We need to talk of that. What is required when we do say that no, the top level executives of the organization, they do have the utmost authority with them. They do have all the power to execute with them is there. So they are the trend setters. They are the path setters for the people downline, right? So developing the competencies which can really add value, which can really promote the culture, right? And they, facilitate the changes in a smoother way. So that is how the role of the senior management is there in the organizations, right? When we do talk of the mid-level management, actually this mid-level management or the lower level management here you can see, they are the people who do have the responsibility of dealing with the workers and the management. So they are at the mid, right? They directly deal with the workers. So they are exposed with all those grievances that the workers do have. So what we need to develop within those mid-level management people in terms of competences, this mid-level managerial people must understand the rules of the workplace, rule book, right? Understanding the customs and practices, like they have the culture of celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, right? What are the basic practices that the organizations do have, which are unique in terms of its nature? So customs practices we need to understand while dealing with the employees and the union. Like we have understood, driven by Marxism, a different sort of philosophies are there. Driven by Gandhian concept, a different philosophy will be there. How do I take all those things into consideration? Right? Knowledge about the legal framework of hire. Legal framework is how to deal with the workers. So some or rather this middle level management should also develop all those skills of implementing the standards set by different enactments, right? So legal framework is there, knowledge about the history background of union leadership itself, what are the approach that the unions do have, right? Unions in a sense, whether they are driven by that cooperation philosophy of conflicting philosophy, all those things. We to talk of this knowledge about emerging environment scenario, right? Where we need to prepare these mid-level managers to deal with any kind of challenges and to make the workers accept those kind of challenges itself, right? First thing, the different sort of skills that the managers need to develop within themselves, like diagnosing the problem itself. When workers to come up with some sort of grievances of their own, unless and until I do understand the basic reason of the grievances, handling those grievances or managing those aspects of the grievances are not possible, right? So diagnosing the problem to reach to the root cause of any such grievance or dispute is required, right? So how to develop those skills of using the tools of diagnosis. Sometimes we use certain OD tools, organizational developmental tools, right? Some question answer there, like sometimes we carry out certain activities to fill that. Okay? So all of those about understanding and diagnosing the problem itself. For to find out the resolution, you are going for skills in negotiation, interpersonal skills. All of those are the skills that the managers need to develop, right? Attitude, actually the management should treat the workers as a part of the manager's organization, right? So like the attitude should be participative, right? Sometimes it may so happen that the workers, they do not come out with their own contributions unless and until their thought processes, their cognition processes are being taken into consideration, right? So developing a positive attitude towards the problem solving. What I want, a positive work culture, cooperation, which will lead to maximization of profit, where I can get a share from that particular profit, or I want a conflict on a long-term basis. The approach towards problem solving has been shifted from collective to individualized ones, right? I'm not considering the collective solution. Any individual does have a problem, so let us first identify that and solve that, right? We're talking about that. Positive belief system about the unions and their existence itself. That is what it has been observed in a past couple of decades. The unions have lost their relevance in the organizations. Unions are no more treated as an effective way of finding out the things, right? So faith towards one another, faith in participative mechanism, all of those things are to be developed within the mid-level managerial people in the organization. Similarly, if I have to talk of the workers, I have taken that union as a unit, right? So comprising of workers itself. Union and the workers should also focus on development of leadership abilities within themselves. So these are like workers of the union. They are the people who do negotiate with the management, who do work with the management in the decision-making process to finalize the terms and conditions. So they must be developed. So what sort of competencies you need to understand? Workers, union, rules of the workplace, right? That's common. Commitments made in the various settlements and awards. What are the solutions to those grievances, and what are the commitments made by the management, or what are the awards being given by the honorable courts, right, or industrial tribunals, national tribunals? Implementation of that, or the commitment of the management towards that, right? Understanding of the legal frameworks, all those enactments which do have a direct or indirect impact on the worker's life at the place of work, right? Those legal frameworks need to be understood. Like all those enactments, as I said, protective legislations are there, regulative legislations are there, compensation related legislations are there. All those aspects we need to take into consideration, right? And knowledge about the workers' sociology and the problems of the workers, right? So if at all it is somewhat related with the workers in terms of their psychological problems, then that can be taken into consideration. Okay? Knowledge about the workers' sociology, it's okay. Skill, we are talking of interpersonal skills are to be developed, right? So there has to be a feeling among the workers of the organization. So supervisory personnel, supervisory staff and the workers to develop that level of trust, level of belief, faith on one another, so that the conducive work environment can be there. Skills in a constructive confrontation should be there. Leadership skills are there, right? And in terms of attitude, there has to be flexibility, there has to be resilience and problem solving attitude among the workers itself, right? So these are some of the prerequisites for a successful HRD OD approach to IR itself. So friends, let us end up over here, and we have understood that HRD and OD doesn't only play a significant role in terms of the individual employees, but when I do talk of the holistic approach, holistic growth of the organization, it also plays a very significant role. Okay? So thank you very much for attending this session, and once again we'll meet in the next session to discuss more about HR. Thank you.